Well, hello, welcome again to a reading through of Paul's Epistle to the Romans, and I got up to chapter 8. This has the heading in this particular version of Life in the Spirit. So he begins, Uden ara nun, nice combination of particles here. The ara, that I mentioned before, has the sense of accordingly. It's often a bit much to translate it. Some people just translate it as then, but it has that sense of fittingly or accordingly. The uden goes with the katakrima. The verb katakrino is to condemn somebody. It's a law court term. And the abstract noun katakrima, third declension, neuter noun, hence we get uden here, means condemnation. So it's literally accordingly. Now, there's no verb in the sentence, you've got to supply the verb to be. There is no condemnation, tois, for those in Christ Jesus. Again, I'm always interested in the word order here. Sometimes he says Jesu Christo and sometimes Christo Jesu. I'm sure studies have been done on that, but I've never really understood why he changes the order here. So it continues, hoga nomos, for the law of the Spirit of the life. Complicated collection of genitives here. Again, perhaps the commentaries may have more to say on this. We do get a little bit later in the next section here the law of sin and of death, and so that must really go with the law of, so the nomos really must be going with the test soes, the law of life, but he's put this tu pneumatos in the middle here. Again, you need to look at the commentaries on this. So it may be it's the law of life, which perhaps comes from the Spirit, is one possible interpretation, but it's literally the law of the Spirit of the life. I'm going to hold that bit there and take the verb. This is from eleuthero, an Omicron contract verb. You get eleutheros, meaning free, and the verb means to set free. So has set you free, and then I'm going to take the in Christo Jesu, in Christ Jesus. I think that's more natural in English. So for the law of the Spirit of life has set you free in Christ Jesus, and has set you free from the law of sin and of death. There's a variant reading with the set. The variant reading is to read me, and that has been taken up, I noticed very quickly, in some of the modern commentaries, but the text here says se rather than me, which would be me. Toga adunaton tu nomu. We get the to goes with this neuter here. Paul likes to use this sort of neuter singular within a dependent genitive, and it's probably again a Semitism of some sort. So it means the inability of the law, the fact that the law is unable. So literally for the inability of the law, en ho, something like in that, it will be cause, it's causal, it's almost given that, but it's literally in that. Aisthene from aistheneo, it's an epsilon contract verb, so this is an imperfect with a contract at the end, the double epsilon. In as much as, or in that, it was weakened, diates sarkos, through the flesh, God. So again, this particular clause here doesn't, it's got a verb here in a relative, but the first bit doesn't really quite make sense. It's something like the law was unable to do it. So that which the law was unable to do, in that it was weakened through the flesh, God, Pempsas, having sent ton hia tu huion, the son of himself, so his own son, en homoi omati, in the likeness of, literally of the flesh of sin. Now again, this is probably a Semitism here. As I mentioned before, Hebrew lacks large numbers of adjectives and often uses a way of getting around this using nouns. And so it's probably a Semitism here for sinful flesh, literally of flesh of sin, and has condemned, and regarding sin, he has condemned sin in the flesh. But that's a very complicated verse, and again I leave it to the commentators to explain, especially this last bit here. So just to do that again quickly, so it's for this bit here is difficult. It's something like for that which the law could not do, the inability of the law. It's almost a separate accusative phrase here. So for that which the law could not do, in that, or because it was weakened through the flesh, God, having sent his own Son in the likeness of sinful flesh, literally of flesh of sin, and regarding sin, he has made a condemnation, so he has condemned the sin in the flesh. And the sentence goes on, hina ta dikaioma. Dikaioma is, means something like an ordinance or a law, something which is part of a statement of justice. So perhaps an ordinance generally is rendered, I think. So in order that the ordinance of the law might be fulfilled, en heimin, in us, or perhaps among us, it's always difficult with en, whether it means in or among, the ones, this goes with the peripatusin, which is a dative plural participle, from peripatio, which is very common, used in the sense of to conduct one's life, but here it just generally translated as walk. For those not walking according to the flesh, ala kata pneuma, but according to the Spirit. The fact the article's not there doesn't really amount to much. We have to put it in English. Hoiga katasaka ontes, for those being, in the flesh. Would have been better if he'd put that verb as a participle here, but he's put ontes. So for those who are, understand perhaps conducting themselves according to the flesh, phronusin, from phronio, they think the things of the flesh. And then we get the same again. It would have been nice to have a men up here, but we did a de here. And we have to supply stuff from up here. So those who understand ontes kata pneuma, those who exist according to the Spirit or are conducting themselves according to the Spirit, and we're going to supply the verb again, they think the things of the Spirit. Toga phronema tes sarkos thanatos. We're going to supply the verb to be here, I think, again. The phronema, it's literally a thought. Mentality might be a good way of translating this. I've forgotten what the modern translations do, but phronema is literally a thought. It's connected with phrein, a verb for your mind. So for the mentality of the flesh, understand, is thanatos, is death, and the mentality of the Spirit, understand, is zoe kai eirene, life and peace. Dioti to phronema tes kasakos ektra es theon. Wherefore, for which reason, on account of which, the mentality of the flesh, understand, is hostile in respect to God. Toga nomu tu theou uk hypotassitai udiga dunatai. For this is passive here from hypotasso. It's a compound meaning to subject someone. So so it's hostile to God. It has not been subjected. It is not being subjected. It's present to the law of God. Udigar dunatai, for it is not able, understand too. It does not have the ability. Hoide en saki ontes theo, on the next page it's aresai udunantai. For those being in the flesh, slight variation here, there's no great difference between really the katasaka and ensaki, but those being in the flesh, and on the next page we get udunantai, and then aresai, they are not able. Aresai is an aorist infinitive from areso, and it means to please, and it takes a dative. So on the previous page we have theo. Those being in the flesh are not able to please God. Humes der uk esti en saki alla en pneumati, e pe pneuma theo oike en humin. But you are not in the flesh, but in the spirit. If indeed, it's the sense of the pair here, it emphasizes it. So if indeed, oike, the pneuma, the Spirit of God, dwells in humin, well, again, it can be mean in you or among you. Eide tis pneuma Christu uk eche, hutos uk est in autu. But if someone does not have the Spirit of Christ, this man is not of him. That is, this man does not belong to Christ. This man is not his, literally. Eide Christos en humin, ton men soma necron dia hamatian, tode pneuma zoe dia dikaiosune. But if Christ is, well, either among you or in you, I'm tempted to go with the among here because it's plural. So if Christ is not among you, and we get a nice men and der, which we should enjoy. We don't get too many of those in Paul. So on the one hand, the body is understood dead through sin, but on the other hand, the spirit is soe, is living, is a living thing through righteousness. The grammar's a little bit odd here. We get an adjective nekros, meaning dead, and it's neuter agreeing with top soma. We get the neuter pneuma, meaning spirit, but we don't get an adjective, we get a noun here. So the spirit is life, literally, through righteousness is the literal meaning of it. I'll do that bit again. So if Christ is among you, on the one hand, the body is dead through sin, but the spirit, understand, is life through righteousness. So they're not really that parallel, these two clauses here. Eide top pneuma to agerantos ton Iesun ek nekron oike en humin, ho egeras Christon ek nekron, zoe poiese kai top thneata somata humon, dia tu enoikuntos autu pneumatos en humin. But if the spirit of the one having raised, genitive, aorist genitive participle here from agero, the one having raised Jesus from the dead. So if that spirit oike dwells well, perhaps among you, the one having raised Jesus, the Messiah, Christon, from the dead, will make alive. So will give you life, will make you alive. Obviously, from the so root, the root and poio. This is a verb here. Will make you alive. Oh, sorry, will, no, we've got a chi here. Will make alive also, or even, your mortal bodies through his indwelling spirit among you. See that bit again. So, for if the spirit of the one having raised Jesus from the dead dwells among you, could be in you if you prefer, the one having raised the Messiah from the dead will make alive even tathaneta your mortal bodies through his indwelling spirit in you or among you. This is a participle from enoikio, to live in, or to dwell in, so indwelling, it's often translated. Theneta is an adjective from thnetos. It's formed from the verb thenesko, which only appears in the New Testament in the compound apothenesko. Generally in Greek, you only get thenesko in poetry, but the root of it survives as an adjective here, thnetos. Ara un adelphoi, ophelatai esmin, u te saki tu katasaka tsen. Ega katasaka tsete melete apothenesken. Ede pneumati tas praxis tu somatos thanatuti tseseste. Again, we get this ara un. Accordingly, therefore, to over-translate it a bit, brethren, we are, as men, first person plural from the verb to be, so we are opheletai. This is a first declension masculine noun, opheletes, formed from the verb ophelo, ophelo to o. So we are debtors, not to the flesh, and then we get a to plus the infinitive for purpose, so as to live according to the flesh. For if you live according to the flesh, melete, you are about to die. But if by the Spirit, this is a dative here, instrumental dative, so if by the Spirit, thanatute, this is a verb from thanatoo, it's an omicron contract verb, and it's the second person plural. So if by the Spirit you put to death the praxis, this is a word meaning actions or doings or deeds. It's an abstract noun. Praxis is the nominative form. It's a third declension feminine abstract noun formed from prasso, to do. So these are literally the doings of the body. And then say test their future from you will live. Goes into the middle in the future. So, but if you put to death, if by the Spirit you put to death the actions or doings of the body, you will live. Hosoiga pneumati theou agontai, for as many as agontai are led by the Spirit of God. This is a passive, present passive from ago. As many as are led by the Spirit of God. Hutoi huiu asin. Those ones are the sons of God. Uga elabete pneuma douleas palin es phobon, ala elabete pneuma huiothesias en ho presdomen abahopater. For you did not receive a spirit douleas, abstract noun, douleia, of slavery. So he did not receive a spirit of slavery. Palin es phobon, just a funny little phrase here. It's literally back into fear. So it's something like so as to relapse into a state of fear. So it's literally to go back into a state of fear. But elabete, you received a pneuma phiothesias, a spirit of adoption. This is probably not it's a late coinage, and probably not by Paul. The Jews themselves apparently did not practice adoption, and that's what the word means. It's from huios, a son, and the thes is from the root is from tithemi, to place as a son. So you did not receive a spirit of sonship or adoption, in which we cry, Abba, Father. Nominative for vocative here, I think. It's not our Father is Abba, but Abba, Father. Abba is, of course, a Semitic word, and then the Greek is hopater. Auto to pneuma, sum mature to pneumati hemon, hoties men techna theou, ade techna kai kleronomoi. Kleronomoi men theou, sun kleronomoi de Christou, aper sum pascomen hina kai sun dox astomen. For the Spirit itself bears witness with the spirit of us. So the Spirit itself bears witness with our spirit. This is from sun plus marturio, that we are techna, children of God. And if children, also kleronomoi, these are heirs. We get a nice men and a de here again. Should enjoy that. So on the one hand, inheritors of God, and on the other hand, inheritors with Christ. So fellow inheritors of Christ, literally. Sun normally takes a dative, but so this must be fellow heirs. It's almost with Christ, or of Christ. Again, I'll leave the commentators to worry about that. Aper, if indeed we suffer together, we suffer with him, from sun plus pasco, in order that also we might be glorified. This is a aorist passive subjunctive from sun doxasdo, in order that we might be glorified, understand, with him. And that is the first part of chapter 8.